those of you who don't know me, and I guess we'll close this real quick. Not that we don't all enjoy the ambiance of sitting on an avenue at 7:30 at night, but when someone drag races, someone's going to complain. And with that, does everyone have an agenda for today? Yeah. Great. If someone needs one, right over here. Also, I put at that table, we have flyers. We're doing our cleanup this weekend with Senator Fernandez, and we'd love to have as many people there as humanly possible. So the details are on here, but the flyers over there. And also, know your rights. Remember at the last meeting, we had a legal aid attorney come to do a whole know your rights thing about ICE. I saw there was some social media activity about ICE possibly being on the island. I don't know anything beyond what I read on social media. It was an anonymous person who posted it, so you can't follow up with that person. And given some of the spicy commentary back and forth, I don't know if they wanted to be followed up with. But yes, so we have the resources here. We also link to them in our newsletter that everyone should have received. So it's right on our in our social media stuff. So if you need it, come see me afterwards. Call, text. We will make sure you get the resources you need. So that's very important as well. There's going to be a slight change to the agenda because we have a special guest who I was not anticipating, and that's my colleague at my day job at Jacobi, Gary Hecker is here. I actually have him on the agenda for later on. Gary, why don't you come on up here for a minute, because you were nice enough to join us, which I didn't anticipate, but love to have you.
Surprise.
Yeah, you know what? We all enjoy being surprised. Gary is our trauma coordinator at Jacobi, so he is actually going to be the person who's going to be helping us do the Stop the Bleed training. What this is, for those of you who don't know, and he's going to explain it much more in detail because he's knowledgeable and I'm not, but it's a whole tourniquet training in ways if you're caught in an likely active shooter situation, but a bunch of other situations where you will be prepared to administer first aid training or emergency training, even if medical teams cannot get to you right away. So without further ado, let's give Gary a big hand because he came out here to join us.
That's about it. So, like John said, my name is Gary Hecker. I do injury prevention, education, and outreach for the trauma program at Jacobi. So always tease that it's my job to shut down the trauma center because I'm supposed to try to stop preventable unintentional injuries. But we started a conversation. I do a lot of these Stop the Bleed classes at the hospital and open for the community and hospital staff. And like John says, tourniquets and other bleeding control techniques in case of an emergency. It started with active shooter. It all came about after the Sandy Hook shootings in Connecticut several years ago, and they came together and like, we got to do something about it. And now over 4 million people have been trained in this technique. I'm actually going to be at a conference in July where I call him the inventor of Stop the Bleed is going to be the keynote speaker. I've heard him speak once before. Really an interesting story how this came about. But the conversation started. John had reached out to me about doing something with the community because you guys are stuck on an island, and if you know what hits the fan, you could be left isolated. And as I was talking with some of your group earlier, I grew up in isolated beach community. I grew up in the Rockaways. I live on South Shore of Long Island now. I don't know how bad this place got with Sandy, but I had 4 feet of water in my house and no way to call 911 because the phones were down. So it's scary. So we were talking about trying to have resources available, and Stop the Bleed is a quick, easy start to get things going. Very simple, a little bit of lecture and then a lot of hands-on. I get it done in about 45 minutes to an hour, really wham bam, no messing around. And the only thing that I can't do is give you a tourniquet to leave with because I don't have grant money for that. But I think John's going to work on that.
We're going to work on that.
But if you have any questions, John knows how to get a hold of me if you want to. I can reach out to other organizations, reach out to a bunch of other community organizations in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. And
we're happy to open it up to anyone who wants to come here. So that's not a problem for us. Obviously, we want to. This is a part of what we've been doing with community organizations active in disaster. We've done 3 trainings. We haven't had one in the spring yet because we've been so busy, but we want to start that up again. So Gary's going to be Act 1, And then at the request of some of the members, we'll be doing another Narcan training, the Lock Zone Narcan training. We'll do that towards the end of the summer, and we're going to be restarting our co-ed program towards the fall. Unfortunately, with some changes in FEMA, we have our liaison, Race, who we were working with, Race Hodges, who was wonderful. He's since moved on to other endeavors. So we're getting a new person at FEMA. We still have our DOH contact, who is Amjad. He's still very involved. So this is going to be another component of teaching people, emergency skills. Because as we all found out the other day, when the bridge closed for the better part of 2 hours, I know a lot of you weren't happy because you call and text and share that frustration with me. Most of you are very nice. A few of you like to say care loudly. Gary obviously is a tremendous resource, and I want to thank him for coming out, and we're going to definitely have him towards the summer. So you'll get back to us with some dates, and we'll open it up. It'll be open to all groups on island and off island, right? Because we want to keep it open for everybody. Let's give him a round of applause. In keeping with that, this kind of lends its way to the discussion. The party boat, everyone remembers, it was like a week or two ago. All of a sudden, there were like 5 choppers going over the avenue. Are we good? Are we off center?
Your head's getting chopped.
Oh, okay. Let me move back a little bit. Sorry about that. We get the choppers going on, and one chopper every now and again is not terribly surprising, but when there were about 5 and they were hovering and traffic stopped, it was a lot. But the important thing is that with the party boats, and I know people have been complaining about the party boats, and we've been passing those complaints along to the precinct. The good thing is that there were no serious injuries. And they closed the bridge to bring out 22 ambulances. I know some people were not thrilled with that because they made that very well known. That is their emergency policy, was to close the bridge to bring the 22 ambulances in. They took everybody to the hospital, Jacobi Hospital. No serious injuries, everyone was treated and released. A good way for that to end, given that there was a fire on a boat, and I know the captain, there's a dispute there of what the cause was, so I don't want to get into it because I'm not knowledgeable, nor was I on the party boat, despite what some people may think. So that was important. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up because for a few years now, when we did the first co-ed meeting, we had representatives there from the Office of Emergency Management. So Monday morning, after the Saturday night party boat incident, I emailed them and said, we had a long discussion about bringing CERT to the community. This is the Community Emergency Response Team. This is the city that trains people. And I said, you guys keep putting this off. You keep telling us budget money's not there, whatever. Here was another real tangible example of what could happen. God forbid, again, almost 30% of the community is senior citizens. Someone could have fallen. Someone could have had respiratory distress. Someone could have had, an issue. And if we had people who were trained on the island who could, not all 30 people are going to be hanging out on City Island on a Saturday night. I get that. But if we had at least a few people who could be activated in that kind of emergency response situation, it's going to help the community be better off. So again, they said, okay, well, can you give us 30 people who are all free in this time, some kind of crazy time period? It's either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday to do it would be February of next year. So that's why in the email, we are re-soliciting to get people who are interested in doing that. The last time we put something out, we got over 20 people on the island who were ready to commit. So I encourage you all, we're going to have a lot more flyers for this, and we're going to really give it a good try here. And then we're going to be leaning on our elected officials and their representatives to try to push OEM to not forget us, even though we're 4,500 people. There are unique vulnerabilities to this community that, God forbid, an emergency could happen. We could be in a really, really tough situation.
Get some cool swag.
Yeah,
some cool shirts.
that's right.
Get a helmet and everything.
I'm enlisting you. You're going to be our design expert now, Gary. So, yes.
Sorry, would that only be for the City Island residents, or would it be open to anyone in the East Bronx interested in? Because I did the training, and it's all the way in Brooklyn. And I wish it would have been in the Bronx.
Me too.
When CERT originally came out in New York City, if I remember correctly, it was tied to either every precinct or city council district. So the way it was supposed to be set up back then was every local community, because it's a grassroots organization. So yeah, OEM down in their headquarters in Brooklyn was like where all the training is, but they're supposed to branch it out. So there was tons of grant money after 9/11 and after Sandy, and like everything else, it's kind of like, you know, some communities, I think New York City just never embraced it as well as other parts of the country have, and so the grant money kind of shifts to where it's getting used, is a guess. That's just an uneducated guess, because I'm...
Well, you are educated. You're an emergency, you're a trauma coordinator, Gary. It's not educated, you're educated.
I have to be careful on what I say because I am an intermittent federal disaster employee.
Fair enough.
So,
and we are being recorded, but regardless. So, I think, listen, we would welcome it being broader than that. We just would want a concentration of people here just because of the unique vulnerabilities. However we get the class, I think is the most important thing. And a lot of the vulnerabilities are the same. This is just a unique situation with the party boat, and this happened a few years earlier where we had a similar situation when an ATV went on fire on the old bridge, where like something can happen here, and we are totally cut off from the rest of the borough. It's another reason to be pro-ferry, but I will leave that to another day.
Two logistics questions.
Yeah.
Is there a product, like, we're not the only place that has one thing on and off? Like one, you know, there are other islands, there's other dead ends. Like, how does shutting down City Island and making like a parking lot of the traffic circle and leading onto the traffic circle have it be safer for emergency vehicles to get on the island? Like, I don't understand if, because everybody that was stuck, so nobody was moving, versus if they were moving and they policed our emergency lane, wouldn't that be a much better system? I mean,
I can just repeat what I was told, and again, I have no...
Unless I missed something.
What we were told was that they just shut down all traffic to get all 22 ambulances here, situated, ready to receive emergency response for patients that we needed. And then once they were here, keeping it shut down so they get off the island quick enough, and that if traffic had been circulating, it might have slowed down that emergency response. That's what we were told. We can try to get something in writing, which I'm open to do.
Isn't that what the fire lane's for? Like, for me...
As an emergency responder, the issue becomes traffic's moving until that 3-car MVA on your 2-lane bridge getting out, and now all traffic is stopped. So they're trying to mitigate a problem before it happens. I know it doesn't make sense to someone who's stuck here, but that's the thought process behind it.
No, the more concern is not the people stuck on the island, but the people who were trying to get on the island. It was so broken out there that I don't even know what it did to get people here, because the problem wasn't here, it was on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah, I guess what they would say is just that this was the staging location for the evacuation and rescue. I'm not saying it's right. We can ask for a more official response. I appreciate you being here because you actually have that experience that I wouldn't
have a fire lane at all? Right? Like if it's for emergency vehicles.
I think a fire lane is for, the average EMS run out here to get somebody who might have fallen and maybe piled over somewhere else, which is usually one emergency straight down, or there's a police situation at one of the restaurants and they have to get down here. The potentially mass casualty incident of a 20-person boat going on fire is really, really unique. That doesn't often happen. So the fire lane is for the more common things that we just discussed, the more common scenarios, while 22 ambulances that need to rush and go, that is something that's not going to happen every day.
And is there a way to communicate that better for everybody's sake?
Yeah, let's try to get a better response. I'm open to that.
And again, obviously you had zero control over it. It's just, those are just sort of the questions that I was...
No, I think it's fine. Let's work on it, and we'll send it to OEM and to NYPD, and we'll try to get a better response.
What is the protocol?
Yeah, that's fine.
But something I would say, just on echoing that, there was a lot of confusion. My Citizens app, which I don't know that anybody or how many people even have it downloaded. I thought that the diner was on fire. Yeah. Because of the way the images were coming out.
Like that.
And
people were saying Hard Island is on fire.
Yeah. But even to make it my neighbor is elderly. She can't even go down off of her porch, and so she's asking me, and I'm saying, I don't wanna speculate, cause I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on. And the fire department was literally in front of my house,
Mhm.
they weren't telling us what was going on, cause they were dealing with it, but I don't know if there's any actual emergency response tools that we can use, or communication tools.
Yeah,
you know.
so there was Notify NYC, which I encourage everyone to sign up for. I know you had a question, so we're gonna come back to you. Notify NYC, everyone should get on. It's an email or a text message they will send you. As someone who gets it, I don't know how
Yeah, there wasn't much that night.
yeah, how timely they are with the responses. So I'm sympathizing with you and your neighbor and everyone else. But no, we could definitely see what the response, what is the protocol going forward, I think is fair.
The notify, that's like general, it's not location specific.
Well, they do send if it's in a specific location, like something like that, like what happened
I've
that
gotten
day.
weird things from
We
them.
did get something. The problem was that it came out very late.
Yeah.
Well, this I got, they sent out something saying that like there's traffic trouble on City Island
Yeah.
because of an incident,
Got it.
something like that.
Yeah, that's not like,
Just a question, like if there was an emergency, let's say somebody's having chest pain,
Mhm.
heart attack, and they
Yeah.
call 911, so would that cause a delay then for the ambulance to come?
No, and that's I think that's what Dan's trying to say is why we want to get clearer communication, because if it's a single emergency situation, that happens on City Island probably 4 or 5 times a day. To be perfectly honest, maybe not 4 or 5, 4 or 5 times a week at least. Let's leave it at that. But when it's 22 people and you're not sure what condition they're getting off the boat in, and there was potentially a fire, and there might need to be burn care, wound care, emergency care, resuscitation on site.
No, I get
Yeah,
that.
that is a different kettle
But
of
it
fish,
would
so
not
to
cause
speak.
a delay for an ambulance
No.
or fire and whatever to come onto the island,
Yeah.
aside from that.
Exactly. And do I have it right? And everyone here, I'm asking for. But the last time they really shut down the bridge was the ATV that went on fire in like 2008, right? Does anyone remember another time when I know they shut down the bridge during Sandy, and none of us left, which was shame on all of us.
There
but-
was an accident. There was a motorcycle or something else.
Oh yeah. Okay, so it happens every few years, but we should try to see what the protocol is and try to develop that more. So that's a good suggestion, and thank you. Does anyone else want to add anything to this before we, Nellie?
We came over to City Island Avenue and saw what
Yeah.
happened, but there were so many cars, passenger cars, taking the fire, the emergencies, and they were having the emergency the police that were there were having a harder time getting them not to do it.
Yeah.
They just kept on going because they thought if they, could jump in, and that I thought that was a big problem.
These were regular cars, or these were the emergency?
Regular cars.
Regular cars, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, right, is that once they cut off the traffic going in, you're right, there's a whole other situation here because you have cars that are circulating. And, look, none of us like sitting in traffic, or some of us have places we gotta go, and we might not be privy to the emergency situation, so I think a lot of that is going on. But let's try to see what the emergency protocol is, and then think about the best way to communicate that going forward. Hold on, that gentleman's trying to meet.
John, real quick.
Yes, sir.
The training that's already scheduled for early police of February, is that meant to be on the island, or is that also going to be available?
They are open to put, it's a good question I'm sighing because they're trying to push to get it here, but it is not a done deal. So that's why we might need to all raise our collective voices with some of our more powerful friends here, like the young lady sitting right next to you here on the couch, and make sure we get we get them to pay attention to us. And I know that the senator deeply cares about what happens here, and probably got calls at your own office for this, I'm sure.
We saw it all over Facebook. We saw it all over Facebook.
It was all
Put
over
in the group
Facebook.
chat.
That is
We're
true.
aware, we're aware.
That is true. Okay.
I just do want to point out for the Memorial Day parade,
Mhm.
traffic was shut down.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at how respectful
Mhm.
people were. Like they
Yeah.
wasn't going crazy, trying to take over.
Mhm.
They sat and I was surprised at how patient
Do you-
they were. So
Do you think that was maybe because they were veterans like you, and it was,
I
and
doubt
people were
all
just.
those- Or everybody in
Yeah.
that traffic was
Yeah.
veterans.
Well, no, they knew it. They knew it was the.
So they had that sense of respect.
Yeah.
They have that respect. So
And it also was somewhat expected, right? Because they had advertised 2:00, or they were going to close down at a certain time. While this.
Like, maybe I'm not looking in the right place, but like every year I look
Mhm.
and I never see City Island's road closure listed with the others for the city. So I know because I live here, but
Yeah.
I don't know if people coming to City Island necessarily.
We can ask for that when we
No.
ask about the proper part. That's a good suggestion. And how do they get that information out there? The thing is
It's
that.
like the police,
Mhm.
the police know that the road is closed because they're coming around. I mean, like on my street, they dropped one of those barricades and just like in somebody's yard like the day before. So it's not a surprise. It seems like isn't there some sort of coordination of which roads are closed so that they would all be in one central place on the city website?
They should be, and the one thing that I think we have a unique ability here is that, remember for Notify NYC a few years ago through the advocacy of some of the people in this room, they created a special email alert just for the Rodman's Neck shooting range when there's detonations or things like that, controlled demolitions. And so from that list, yes, you do have some people from Country Club and Edgewater who are concerned, but that list is primarily people from the zip code. So you already kind of have a working list where you don't need to go out and create like a new capture for this audience, that you have that audience. So I think that's something, building on what Dan said and what you're saying and Abby and everyone else here, is we kind of, with very minimal effort, there might be a better way to channel information in these situations, on top of trying to get this in. So I get it. I think definitely with road closures, even routine road closures, because really, when you think about it, City Island's roads only close scheduled twice a year. Memorial Day and Halloween. That's it. So, if we can just find better ways to get that information out there, I think that can piggyback on this request with everything else that we've heard from about the emergency situations.
I just want to say, I actually was aware that it was a road close for that day, and I don't live on the island, I live in Palm Gardens, but I was aware that it was by word of mouth, but I was still
Right,
aware.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I knew the road was going to be closed too, but I looked it up because I had to go somewhere. So I was like wondering, when exactly is the road going to close because I have to make sure I can get there. And I went to look it up and I could not find this information. I found information about Memorial Day parades like around the city, but I could not find it. Like there's a website that's literally dedicated to Memorial Day parade closures, like on the city website, but ours was not there. So just it might.
No, it's a good
people
suggestion.
who are coming
It's a
to
good
the
suggestion.
island, like nobody wants to sit there. So if they know, oh, I should come to dinner at 5 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's a
They'll
very good suggestion.
prevent people from sitting there.
Okay, good point. Does anyone have anything else they want to add to this particular discussion before we move on? All right. If anyone, something comes later to mind, email us, cityonrising@gmail.com. For the people watching online, cityonrising@gmail.com, all one word, no dots, no anything. If you have different suggestions, we will incorporate that into the correspondence we put out. So sometimes the best idea comes to you well after the meeting, and then you're like, oh, whatever. But you can email it, and we will incorporate it because we'll probably read the letter in about a week or so. Coastal flooding and mitigation. So we're still waiting on a response from the Deputy Mayor's Office to our last letter, which we passed out at the last meeting. We've been in contact with them. They're just trying to get us a few more answers. But one of the good things is they've taken a strong interest in fixing Ditmar Street. The sound side of, the bay side of Ditmar Street, not the sound side of Ditmar Street, which also has a similar problem, but that's because of the construction of the street and some people may be building red fences on land that might not be theirs. But I digress. But they've taken an interest and a site visit is being scheduled, so I'm hopeful. The city's looking into all these street edge situations, and this is one where I think there would be the greatest consensus of half the block shouldn't flood on a no-name storm. I think no matter, I know street ends are a little bit of a third rail issue and there's not consensus, but I think at least on that one, if we can stop the flooding, people should be happy. And the fact that the city, again, we have the flood sensor down there. It's one of the worst flood locations in the entire city of New York. Everyone knows that. You can go to DataViz, and I'm going to put something online so everybody can see it again. But I'll put it up there. But it's DataViz at FloodNet. I'll put up a link tonight and tomorrow on social. If you're not on social media and you like it, call or text, email us, and I will send it to you. But every time there's a storm, it measures how bad the flooding is at particular points. And one of those points is Ditmars on this side, which is one of the worst in the entire city. As bad as Broad Channel, as bad as parts of the Rockaways, as bad as Bensonhurst, for those of us who are near Bensonhurst or anywhere else. It's considered one of the worst locations. So now, as a result of us capturing, both through a bunch of photographs that we've been doing over the years, and also through the flood sensors, we kind of have the evidence on our side. So just a good thing that they're paying more attention to us. Also, if you should have all got this in the email, but I emailed out the presentation the Hunter College students put together on both our resilience needs and also on the ferry. They kind of put it all together in one project. They interviewed me, they interviewed a few different people on the island. I think they interviewed some of the business owners. I know they interviewed the City Island Historical Society. So they put together this proposal, which was pretty well done, and they actually want to come back in the fall. We're going to actually probably get some sort of dedicated group that are going to do a much more in-detail survey of our resiliency needs. So to be continued on that. There wasn't a lot of new business, but there was there's still a lot of old business. We're still looking into the swing set that somebody brought up and trying to get a cost estimate for that. We're going to go to our elected officials thereafter. I know that some of the parents, they don't want, if you go to Ambrosini Field right now, it's more the swing set for the babies / toddlers, and they want something for the elder kids. So we're trying to get a cost estimate so that the younger kids and the older kids can both enjoy the swing set. The dog run, as Councilmember Salamanca, who was here at the last meeting, he is reaching out to some of the private business owners down on Bound Street, engaging their receptiveness to this. Also, it's going to require a zoning resolution change, so we're going to be reaching out to our council member as well, because for whatever reason they wrote into the zoning proposal that you couldn't build a dog run within a certain number of feet of the coast, which makes sense from a resiliency standpoint, but if they can incorporate that into the overall design, I think everyone wants a dog run. I think some people have been using it as a third rail issue of who wants the dog run next to their house, the dogs bark. Obviously, they create some other issues as well. And this might be a good location because it's not really near anyone's house, and it is somewhat centrally located on the island itself. 3PK, we're still waiting on a response to our letter. Obviously, we're in times where voting is happening, and I know people are getting knocks on the doors without telling anyone who to vote for, which we can't do because we're a nonprofit and we're also recording right now. It is totally fine for you. It is totally fine for you to say issues that are of importance to you. I know when the people have been coming out and knocking on the doors, and I appreciate, because I've been hearing feedback from people in that room. A lot of you have said the ferry is a very important issue for you. I know that because the people running come back to me and tell me that. So I'm saying, even if you don't have a young kid, think about, for either when you did have the young kids or you have friends who have young kids, getting 3PK on the island would be an enormous benefit, and there's really no good reason that the city, after putting the 4PK in the school, which was good, can't keep a 3PK, and there are places that would keep them. So please mention that when you're speaking to your elected officials, when you're speaking to those who are aspiring to be your elected officials. Childcare is an enormously important thing, and as a neighborhood that is on the edge of the city itself, sometimes we need to raise our voices loud to get the attention that every other neighborhood gets, or the resources that we deserve. But we have a history of doing that. You have anything?
No, I was just joking. I said at least we're on Staten Island.
Go ahead.
Treading lightly. There is an election coming up.
Mm-hmm.
There is a candidate that came to City Island and was very helpful to City Island. Made a video supporting City Island, and 420,000 people saw that thing. So if you are interested in business on the island, you should discuss with the business owners about the candidate.
I will say, without telling anyone, because we
Is that
can't do that,
reasonable?
it was a very good video.
That's what I was. It was solid.
It was a very good video.
And I guess I can say, as a business owner, I appreciate
Of course you can.
candidates coming and discussing with us what we need for citizens.
And that's another thing too.
And knowing we exist. That's
Yes.
always great.
That's another thing too. People come here, including someone in company with us tonight, but people come here because this neighborhood votes. This neighborhood votes at a higher propensity. We might be only 4,500 people, but we vote multiple to the size of what we are compared to Western End neighborhoods. So stay engaged, and I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm just saying if these issues matter to you, right, when people come to your door and ask you for their support, it is perfectly fine for you to say, as an informed citizen, these issues are important to me. Again, no one here was told to vote for anyone. Back on the map here, I'm waiting on a response to the utility poles on Fordham Street. I have sent it in several times, so I'm continuing to nag them. I'm moving from persistent to pest mode, but I'm fine with that.
Which utility pole?
There are two.
Okay,
There are two.
I'm
There's,
thinking of one that hasn't been addressed as
Yes.
well.
yeah, there's
The
one.
one on the corner of King and Fordham.
That's one of them.
I've had
Yeah.
Verizon come out, because I mean, my
Yeah.
house is right in front and the wires are just coming down. A delivery truck will pull up and take wires with them as they go.
Yeah. So let's keep in touch,
Yeah.
but as of our last meeting, Con Ed seemed to indicate that it was a very serious problem, but I drive down that street all the time. I
Yeah.
have friends on your block, and it has not been addressed, so I put in another nudge to them.
Okay,
You know,
great.
You're there as well, so I look forward to that. The scaffolds on Fordham Street, CB10 has been reaching out to the owners. They do run a business on the island. We'll see what happens, but you know, we're trying to do the carrot rather than the stick approach because nobody likes a fine if it can be avoided, and that is something we're trying to do. The ferry effort, we're still trying to get good video testimonials. So if you're pro ferry, email us. We just got the camera equipment. I don't have it today because apparently I brought the wrong memory card, so I have a tech issue there. But we have some really nice equipment, similar to what was used when the mayoral candidate was here. In terms of we have some high-tech stuff, so we can cut our own videos, be persuasive, and do things that way. We still have our storefront signs, so if you don't have one and you'd like one, let me know. I have them in my car. I'll go out and grab them after the meeting. And we're continuing to meet with citywide stakeholders. We met with the Bronx Chamber of Commerce, our council member. We met with the neighboring council member who chairs the Economic Development Committee. She gave a lot of great pointers. And we've had some ongoing dialogue with the borough president because we want to bring her along if we can. You know, we want to get everyone on board our NYC Ferry. And I understand that when the candidates were out there, they were asked about the ferry, which made me feel good too.
Yeah, and he had been asked before he came to visit. So.
Good. We love that. The important thing is continue to be the goodwill ambassadors we are. Bike crossing by the bridge, this is your thing, but it's a neighborhood thing. I don't mean that, but it's nice. I give you credit because you brought it to everyone's attention. We did direct it at DOT. They anticipate a response on how they're going to handle it by August.
Can we add to that?
Mhm.
Sorry. Like, technically, when you leave City Island, that's a bike lane.
Yes.
That is designed for people to bike in both directions.
Yes.
It has also become a default walking lane because there's no sidewalk. So they should at least, at the minimum, be labeled the directions that people are supposed to be going. So that, because there's technically like a yellow line, and then there's a white line. So in theory, bikes go on both sides of the yellow line, and then there's a third spot, which is not bike lane, where people should be walking, but it's not, you know. So if they're gonna fix the crossing, they might as well put a bike on the bike lane so that if somebody gets ran into, at least they know they're not supposed to be there.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk afterwards and see exactly how you want to handle it. But I'll get that requested. No problem. And then we still have some pumps, and I have the seeds for you. So hang out afterwards. I'll run to my house and I'll get them for you. But if anyone else has anything, we still have some giveaways we want to give out in terms of the pumps. We want to prioritize the areas that are near coastal areas, and then we still have some of the daffodils. It took me a minute to remember exactly what
When did daffodils go?
We got them a while back, and we just need to get them going here. Does anyone else have anything that wasn't addressed on here that they'd like to see discussed? Yes, sir.
to me, it seems like the cell service has gotten worse in the last couple of weeks. I'm getting more myself dropped calls.
Okay.
Have they, I know you said they were addressing it, it seems to me it's gotten worse rather than better.
They are supposed to be addressing it. Let me check in with them. What provider do you have, if you don't mind me asking? You have Verizon, okay. You know what? And I know someone at Verizon, so let's see what we can do. Because it's funny, when I reached out to them about this whole problem, they're like, oh, Verizon service is the best service. No, we don't have customer complaints in your neighborhood or something like that. I was like, oh, really?
I've definitely called multiple times.
Yes. Huh?
Where is the Verizon tower? Or, 'cause my house is a complete dead zone. I mean.
Yeah, where you are is bad.
I have, you know, I have
And actually,
Wi-Fi, so I'm fine, but.
I have a very good friend on the end of Down Street there by the condos, and when she puts in an emergency call, it actually, she gets 911 in Long Island. That's how bad it is. So trust me, you have it bad. I know you have it bad, but we will. You know what? Let me think about the best way. Maybe there's a way we can try to capture this information from everybody on worst cell phone reception points.
Walk around and do screenshots.
We could, yeah. You know, we could put something on social media and just ask people to let us know. I mean, that's.
Before I moved in my house, you know, we didn't have the Wi-Fi set up, and there was a whole mess with getting it done. So I had no, and I was in my house, and I had absolutely no signal at all. So I don't know where the signal is, but it's not at my house.
It's beyond the convenience thing, it's a public safety thing, because with the landline structure disappearing, or you know, who has a landline anymore? You know, few of us do, but cells are your lifeline out, and you know, when the resource is not available, those batteries start to go on those repeaters. When the power's down for 2 days, those cell towers just die on you.
That's a good point. Jason.
Today, from about 2:30 to 4 o'clock, the post office was not manned.
It's
not the first time it's happened. And the supervisor was not at all helpful because it's a union issue, which I understand. Like, I'm not against unions, but like it's something. Yeah, I mean, I walked in. I happened to be the only one that walked in, but right behind me came 5 or 6 people, literally in the matter of my waiting no more than 5 minutes, and there was a lot of angry people. And the answers were not helpful because.
We'll reach out to the postmaster.
Yeah, the supervisor came in and said, "I can't do anything," so I couldn't even sell a stamp.
You could be pro-union and
John,
pro-phone.
this is just.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
It's just closing something that got raised at the last meeting.
Yes.
The presentation from the lawyer was quite wonderful. But you had asked that the Chamber of Commerce contact all of the restaurants and business owners to pass on the recommendations for how their employees should handle when ICE may show up. And that's been done.
Good.
That
Thank you.
document was sent to every
Great.
member of
Thank you.
the
I appreciate that because I did email Paul, and I know he's super busy, but that's great to hear that it went out to everybody. It's also, just so everyone knows, because thank you for that, because that's very helpful. It's also on our it's on our Scribd page, which is a document center, but it's in the email, and I'm going to start posting it on social media. And it gives a list of resources for the undocumented, and it's also just kind of like, and it's bilingual. She did a Know Your Rights thing, so it's, you know, they're not allowed to go to the back of a restaurant if they don't have a warrant. You don't have to open your door. You don't have to speak to anybody if you don't want to without an attorney present. There's a lot of very helpful information there, so thank you for that because I appreciate that. And that's the more kind of stuff we need to get into, is just making sure that people understand what resources are available. And I agree, Shakira was great in that presentation, and she did a really good job. And the funny thing is, I felt like, not that this meeting has also been great, but the last meeting I felt like we had tons and tons of, like, because we had the guests, we were going, and the meeting went on for like 90 minutes, and then we had a issue, with Facebook where it was live and people were watching and commenting. We still have all the comments like, oh, this was a great meeting. And it's still listed as they were live and the video will be available soon. So I reached out to the Senator's office and also I reached out to Meta, and they're working on it because we were live and we had a great meeting. Usually what we do is we download that video, we put it on our YouTube so we have it forever, and we don't have that video. So we're live right now, but I'm also audio recording, God forbid anything happens. And the crazy thing is, this shows you how far we've come. Meta, when you do like a live video, it transcribes the meeting.
Yeah.
Now, is it perfect? No. But I have a 25-page thing from our last meeting, which is just, I'm going through it, and it's not just reading it because the translations aren't always perfect. So it's going through it and trying to find, oh, that's what that person meant and everything else. But I will tell you that the transcription, like, it captured almost everything, like all the questions and everything. So point is, we're trying to get that presentation because I would actually clip that and make that a standalone thing that we could all share on social media. And maybe we can even reach out to some of our friends and we can get maybe even just like bilingual subtitles for it. So that way if someone who's watching it, even though the presentation was in English, we get some subtitles in Spanish, and I have some friends who are fluent. And then that way at least it's something that can be broadly shared. But thank you for getting that out to the chamber folks, because that is needed. Go ahead.
So I'm obsessed with having a ferry, as
Yes.
you know, but I don't have one yet. So I want to do one in the city on a ferry, and I can go to one right here. So I have family in town. So I went down to Ferry Point Park on a weekend to go on a ferry, and I didn't realize that even though they have that nice parking lot there, that there is absolutely no parking at Ferry Point Park on the weekends because everybody's using the park. So then I was like, maybe I could go to Soundview. So I went to Soundview, and full disclosure, I parked illegally, and then I got a parking ticket. But I went on the ferry and I got into the city. It was a good day. But then I was thinking, how can I do this better next time so that I can get to the ferry? So I tried to find some transportation to get to the ferry, and what I learned is that there is no actual way to get to any of the ferry terminals on the bus.
Yeah.
Is this true? Is this really true? Because I looked at the Google, like I did my Googling. I'm usually, like I've traveled, I'm good at getting around. If I put it in Google to get to Ferry Point Park from here, I have to walk 25 minutes at the end.
Yeah. That's a
bus
big
stop.
problem.
And similarly for Soundview. So I'm just like,
So-
how are you supposed to get to the ferry if you can't park at the ferry? You can't take public transportation to the ferry. So I talked to somebody and they said, how do you get to the ferry? You take an Uber.
So, and I see you have your hand up, so I know you're knowledgeable. I know at least with the Ferry Point one of the Queens buses runs off of Rush
Yeah, that
Avenue.
was a walk.
Yes.
The
Go ahead. Why don't you
44
answer this, because you're
The
knowledgeable.
44 and the 50, that's a walk, because then you're gonna end up by Target, and then you're gonna walk. But and this might be harder, and it is more accessible for me because I live on Castle Hill. But I take the 39, and it's like literally a 5-minute walk, and I mean that's the fastest. Yes, onto the last stop, and you walk 5 minutes, and you're there. But
Does
unfortunately,
anybody want to get people to the ferry though? Because I feel like all of these are like incidental stops that might be near the ferry, but like why don't we want to get people to the ferry?
So much like there was a Bronx bus redesign a few years ago to eliminate some of the stops and make the routes, in our case, 24/7 and stuff like that, I would imagine there's probably going to have to be another Bronx bus redesign in a few years when the Metro Norths come online and the ferries are all here. Because you're right, like all these services need to be interconnected. Otherwise, you're going to have situations that we have an incomplete transportation network.
I thought Barry's would have solved that problem.
Yes.
With their
They have a jitney, which actually the senator was the one who was successful in getting. It still runs, right?
the shuttle runs. I actually don't see it as often as I used to.
Got it.
But and unfortunately, I don't think they even have a schedule So
I asked for the
but
schedule
I do
several
know people
times.
that have taken it, and they say that it's useful if like they're trying to get to Westchester Square because you know that whole area has a 6 train, the 40,
Yeah.
the 8 bus, all these other buses.
Mhm.
But otherwise, I personally don't.
All right, we can reach out to the Frog's Neck bid and maybe just try to see if they have a schedule or what sort of information they have, so at least people can have that available. But
I know in the summer, the Rockaway Ferry, the ferry company runs its own shuttle buses to the beaches.
the Rockaway Rocket, I believe they call it, right?
I forget, but it
Yeah.
runs from, the ferry terminal at 116th to Reese Park and a few other stops.
You're absolutely right. Okay, does no.
Talking about Valley,
Uh-huh.
what's the update?
So last week, the city council passed a home rule bill to allow the alienation of parkland, and now the state legislature. Why don't we let Marilyn speak? Because Marilyn is the representative. Did it pass the Senate or not?
I think they still have to vote on it.
You still have to vote.
Yeah,
I'm
so
sorry.
my understanding is that they will probably have to do like a special session
Got it.
sometime either later in the summer or early fall is my understanding. But definitely before the next session, which would be January 2026. I'm not clear on when that will happen, but as soon as it does, I think, everybody will probably know. But that's what's supposed to happen. They're supposed to do some sort of special session during the summer.
So, thank you for that. I wasn't trying to put you in the hot seat.
No,
I just knew you would have the answer, so don't think that I'm trying to poke you too hard here. And then people just keep in mind, because there's a lot of Bally's stuff on social media, of course, whether you're pro-ferry or anti-ferry. I know we had a presentation, we didn't take a position on it. This is the first step of a larger process. So the home rule then means the state legislature may or may not allow the alienation of parkland. If there is, it needs to be, they need to find new parkland within CB10 to place things at. After that, there's still the universal land use review process for the casino itself. There's still, there's a localized casino committee that will be developed of the borough president, the state senator, the state assembly member, the council member, and the governor. They will come together, they will take a vote, and then at the end of the day, it's still the gambling and racing commission there's still
they might even get the license.
Yeah, there's still multiple steps here that people don't, because people heard the home rule thing and thought, F everybody, that the casino's gonna be built tomorrow. That's not how that works. It's still a much larger process, but again, this is going to touch on city and state, so if you have, whatever your opinions, pro or con, reach out to your elected officials and make sure they know how you feel. Yes. Does anyone else have anything?
John, I have something.
Go ahead, yes.
In the Verity Street, there's a red light, stop light by the beach, and somehow, the base of it rusted away. It's a metal thing, steel pole, and the city, I'm sure Dan, you've been familiar with this too. The base of it rusted away. The city came, I think, a year ago, and they tied it to the fence with a tie, and they left it at that. So maybe somehow it could be.
Yeah, let's go down. I'll come see you and we'll take a photo of it. I also put in something from the last meeting about your tree and sidewalk thing. I found the old photos, and I have to show them to you. I took photos of the sidewalk raised by Liam's house. I took photos, I think 2 or 3 days before that storm that then blew the other tree down. So, and we have that incredible video of that, so, it's wild times on Early Street. And also everyone sees on Early Street the apartment building that I know gets a lot of attention that had the scaffolding up, and then they removed it, they put the scaffolding back. They actually are doing construction there now. So hopefully construction will happen and the scaffolding will come down. But at least they're doing something there, which makes me feel more hopeful than when they just had the scaffolding up for years on end and didn't do anything, right? So that's good too. Does anyone else have anything before we close out the meeting tonight? Yes.
I just wanted to, should I stand up? Or
Yeah, if you could just stand up, I'm sorry.
Hi everybody, my name is Marilyn. I am Senator Fernandez's district director. So I do a lot of the event organizing, so I'm so sorry if I don't know enough about Bally's, but I can get that information for you, and I'm happy to. So just event-wise, we do have the cleanup. We don't have nearly enough sign-ups, and that's okay. Just please show up if you can. We'll have snacks. They're sponsored by the Orange Bank and Trust Company, I think they're called. Waters, Gatorades, everything. So we'll have snacks, and everybody loves free food. So please come out on Saturday. We really look forward to having you there. We also are hosting a paper shredding event later this summer. It is going to be in the White Plains Road, like Story Avenue area of the Bronx, but we're also going to be hosting one in front of our office on August 19th. I just don't have a flyer. So we're limited on how many paper shredding events we can do per year. So next year I'm going to try to rotate. Maybe we can get one here on the island if it's needed, if you guys want it. And then we are also hosting a Korean War Veterans event in Westchester County because we do have the villages of Pelham and Pelham Manor and New Rochelle. So it's a little ways away from here, but it is happening, and that's on June 22nd. I have flyers for all these events in my bag that I don't know if I can leave up here, but I'll leave them here, or I'll just, yeah.
And we have flyers for the cleanup.
Yeah.
So we have 30 flyers over there. Did everyone get one, or?
Yes. So that's the Saturday from 11 to 2. Parks is going to drop off some stuff so we can do some cleanups, and then that's going to just be our starting point. We're going to spread out throughout the island and just clean up some areas that need some little bit of TLC. But otherwise, those are just my really quick updates. As far as events, as far as legislation that has passed both the Senate and the Assembly includes the Senator's bill, which restricts harmful chemical substances in menstrual products. In the Senate, S5922A, which requires opioid antagonists like naloxone in first aid kits to be part of first aid. And so it improves safety for workers in the surrounding communities. AED, the naloxone access is just basically, it requires naloxone to be stored along with AEDs, which are the defibrillators. And then what else? And then 3-day treatment supply allows practitioners to provide a 3-day supply of addiction treatment medications in urgent situations, aligning with federal guidelines to enable faster life-saving care. And that's all I have. I was more just please come to the cleanup on Saturday. There will be snacks,
Everybody,
water, and juice.
clean up. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
We're going to be there. But, it's going to be a good time. Everybody come out. And I did, one of our officers who's not here tonight, or board members rather, she's on the PTA. So I sent it to her. I'm like, do any of these kids need service before the end of the year? So she was going to share.
I went to the school and I dropped off. I was here all Thursday. I went down the island with my intern, flyering everything.
Good.
So I hope everybody knows.
So everybody, this is on our social media page. I know some of you have shared it, and I appreciate that. If everybody can just go on to whichever one you like, Instagram or Facebook or X or Blue Sky or Threads, we do it all. It's on all of them. Just go on and share it. Because you all, don't underestimate your own power to influence people. And you doing that can bring us a long way. One thing, just because the senator is also the chairperson of addiction disorder and a few things. And I know that New York State is big and it's not just New York City. So I know sometimes some laws have unintended consequences because some areas aren't as populated as New York City. But I think it should be considered, there should be a law, even if it just applies to New York City, and I know they do a lot of laws that only populations, municipalities over 1 million people, which is only New York City, basically, it's a state mandate. Every bar, and really every bar or night establishment should have some naloxone on hand, because that's where a lot of these potential overdose situations are occurring.
Yeah, I think that's what one of the bills covers.
Oh, good.
It would be part of like a first aid kit.
Yeah.
In any in businesses, I believe. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, because I mean.
Yes, it expands naloxone access, but it just passed the Senate. I'm not sure if it passed the Assembly.
Okay.
The Assembly had their session extended through this week. I think until tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess we'll see.
Great.
But thank you so much.
Another avenue is going on the federal side and making naloxone part of the OSHA requirement for OSHA first aid kit. So any place that's under an OSHA rule to have a mandated first aid kit, throw Narcan and tourniquets in there.
Good idea. We can make sure AOC's people know about that.
Easy.
There you go.
All
right, everybody, thank you all for coming out. Appreciate you all.
Just